Men and women are different, and they use language differently. The same words don't hold the same meaning for a man that they do for a woman. We have different patterns of talking, we have different word choices, and our emotions are different. Hello, I'm Dr. Debbie, and I've been helping men, women, and couples grow together for more than 25 years. Now it's your turn to learn what I learned and taught as a couples counselor and university professor. You are the wise woman, and this is your personal development podcast packed with instant encouragement and practical tips. And men can learn about women too, because this is a safe place where women are valued and men are respected. We talk about biology, socialization, behavior, emotions, communication, and connection, because men and women are different. Always have been, always will be, and that's a very good thing. I remember one couple in particular. We were doing premarital counseling, and because of the economy tanking back then, they actually were both entrepreneurs. Their businesses were struggling, and they decided to postpone their wedding. And in the process of that, the struggles with his children from his first marriage, who were now young adults, were also a big stress factor in their relationship on an almost day-to-day basis. She says to me, if I'm the problem, I'll just walk away. I hate seeing him struggle this way. It's just so painful. And if I'm the problem, I'll just walk away. The man glazed over. It was so sad to see his face. And I instantly knew how he heard what she had just said. So I told her, I said, you know what he just heard? He just heard, you better get your act together, buddy, or I'm out of here. And she looked at me with this shocked look on her face, and she turned and looked at him. I asked him, did I get it right? And he goes, yep, that's exactly how I heard that. She's like, how in the world could you hear it that way? He was listening through a different filter. Men and women are both sensitive to one another, but they're sensitive to different things. Men are sensitive to things that attack their identity as a man, and that means failure is a huge issue for him. He was trying so hard to please his children, even to please his ex-wife, and now to please his fiance, and his business had tanked, and he was struggling. He was having a really hard time. So he had this filter he was listening through, and what he heard her say was, you better get your act together or I'm out of here. It was filtered through his sense of personal failure as a man. He was not able to provide, to lead, to please anybody. It was just a constant struggle for him, and his business was struggling too. Now, a career is so important to a man. That's another major part of their identity, is to be a provider. And he actually had said in an earlier session that he didn't want to get married until he knew that he could provide for her. That might seem old-fashioned, but I tell you, I believe it's in a man's DNA to be the provider. That's what he felt like he needed to do before he could marry her. And you see this in a lot of the old-fashioned movies from Jane Austen stories, and we see that in earlier centuries of our history, when it was so important that a man be able to provide for a woman, because women weren't allowed to work, they weren't allowed to earn money, and if he couldn't provide, then he was not taking care of her. He was not doing what he needed to do. To think that way, to have that drive to provide. So that was an issue for him. She's looking at it from a completely different angle. And she's feeling like everybody hates me. Her feelings are incredibly hurt by things that his young adult children were saying about her and to her, and the way they were treating her. And so her feelings she's just crushed because all of this is going on. And she's thinking, I'm looking at him, and she's filtering his reactions, and she's believing that he's getting his feelings hurt when actually he was feeling inadequate. And so that's why she came up with her solution, is that I don't want to see you hurting, and so I'm willing to leave if it will relieve you of this pain that you're going through. She totally missed the part that the postponement of their wedding was about him not being able to provide for her until he was able to rebuild her business. Do you see how different that is? And how sad it is that it gets stuck that way. Knowing the differences in what women are sensitive to and what men are sensitive to. Crucial stuff for creating a successful marriage. So just be aware that what you say is not necessarily coming across the way that you want it to when you're talking to your mate, whether it's female to male or male to female. It's important to play back what you say. If he would have said to her, I feel like you're telling me that I've really messed up, and if I don't figure this out, you're going to leave me, then she could have said to him, that's not what I said at all. What I said was, I hate to see you hurting, and if it would help you for me to leave, then I'm willing to give up my dream of being with you. Now he gets to play it back again. So you actually said that you hate to see me hurting, and that if you going away would make my life easier, then you're willing to give up the dream of being with me. Did I get that right? And she could say, yeah, you got it right. And then he would say, did I miss anything? And then she could say, no, I think you got the main idea of all of it. Now he's had a chance to actually play it back. In both of those cases, one where he heard it wrong, where he told her how he interpreted it, and the other one where he tried his best he could to use her actual words. Sometimes it feels a little awkward to do that, but it's really the only way you can discover where those filters are. You know, I've seen couples where one of them is feeling really, really sad, and it's so incredibly obvious to me that the person is feeling sad, and I'll say to the mate, what do you see in his eyes? And sometimes it's hard for them to look at each other, but when she looks at him, she doesn't see sadness, she sees anger. And that's always so puzzling to me, but it's really an indication that, you know, she's listening through a filter. She's listening through a filter of fear. I believe that's what happens in relationships a lot, is that what we think we see in that filter is actually a reflection of our own fears that we don't see through the filter to see what the other person's experience is really like. And that's really what I want to teach couples to do, is how to listen to one another in a way that you get the other person's reality, the other person's hopes and their fears, so you can respond to the truth instead of responding to fear. Thank you for listening to this episode of A Wise Woman's Guide to Men and Marriage. What did you think? Did the information raise more questions? Do you want to learn more? Head over to A Wise Woman's Guide for show notes and links to the resources mentioned in this episode at awisewomansguide.com.